Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Zips, independent investigative health journalist, and we welcome you to the first session of our series called Cancer and Suicide in Schools. We're exploring causation and solutions, and we're joined by an esteemed panel of experts who are on hand to answer your questions and share solutions, and they'll each be giving a presentation based on their experience and their expertise related to this topic. So welcome everyone, and if you'll direct your questions to Nicola rather than just to all. And Nicola Lake is our co-host and co-founder of Wired Schools, and couldn't do this without her. She's stepped in and helped us smooth out a few rough spots tonight, and I really appreciate that. So again, welcome to this session. And would like to start off with mentioning that this event is being dedicated to 13-year-old Mason Ferrulli. He's in, see his collage here, and sadly, he's been challenged with brain cancer from attending a school in Ripon, California, Weston Elementary. You may have even heard about that on the news. It's been made it onto CBS and Fox News. His mother, Monica, has been instrumental at championing a cause to get the cell tower moved, the Sprint tower moved from the school grounds, and they have agreed to do that. However, of course, there's still the radiation coming from the wireless devices inside the classrooms at that school and most every other school in the United States for sure, if not the planet. So we're here tonight to talk about this invisible force that you can't see, smell, taste, hear, or feel for the most part. There are people who are extra sensitive to this, but it is impacting every living being on the planet. And our children are especially vulnerable. They can absorb up to 10 times more radiation than an adult, and they have their developing blood-brain barrier, and it causes DNA damage. It damages, it harms their bodies, brains, and future generations. So it's definitely, obviously, a serious concern. And for Mason, our heart goes out to him. He was diagnosed originally 2.5 years ago with this glioblastoma, a type of brain cancer. And he said to his mother at the time, "Mom, do you think I'm going to make my 13th birthday?" Well, he just celebrated his 13th birthday, and his mom made this collage in celebration of this. So we're holding the good thought that he's going to be fine. And this event is dedicated to him, but he also represents all the children who are being affected by this, whether they've been diagnosed, whether they realize it and impacted. Symptoms can range as light as headaches to nosebleeds, ear bleeds, dizziness, anxiety, depression, etc. So with that said, I would like to, if I may, open with a small candle lighting ceremony to share an intention for this event. It's on healing, so I'd like to light this candle and share a verse with you, as you can see here. Like that, and we're going to put this over on with, I don't even know, can you see in the background here, I have this Buddha. Okay, and I'd like to share this intention with you. It's on healing, and it's based on a Buddhist tradition. May we be at peace. May our hearts remain open. May we awaken to the light of our own nature. May we be healed. May we be a source of healing for all beings. That's what we're here for tonight, so thank you for that. And we'd like to start out with our first speaker, who is Carla Atherton, and she has a most impressive bio. And if I may, to make sure I get it correct, I'm going to, if you'll forgive me, I'd like to read here that she has the following designations of MA, FDN, ITN. Carla is the director of the Healthy Family Formula, host of the Children's Health Summit, family health and nutrition coach, writer and editor, researcher, curriculum developer, publisher, workshop leader, yoga instructor, health revolutionary, and children's health advocate. She's an acreage-living mother of 3 and specializes in family health with a focus on functional, holistic, natural health and wellness, with specific interest in chronic childhood illness, functional neurology, digestive health, addictions, and mental and mood disorders, the science of mind-body practices, stress reduction, autoimmunity, and immunology. Carla coaches families to overcome health challenges using the principles of functional health and lifestyle medicine. Carla also teaches a professional family health coach training program she designed to address the growing need to build an army of health coaches equipped to lead the whole family through the minefield of chronic illness we're facing today and into good health, vitality, and joy. Carla is also a prolific writer and editor, working on several books at present, including Family Health Revolution, which will be released this coming summer. So my first question of you, Carla, is when do you sleep? So this is just amazing, and we are so delighted to have you with us. How is the triad of media, technology, and Wi-Fi affecting the physical and mental health of our youth? Why is it so difficult to address? And how can we empower parents to protect our children from the detrimental effects? So thank you very much, Carla. The floor is yours.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. I made a little PowerPoint, and I'm going to be doing a bit of air traffic controlling because I've got a tiny little screen, and right now I'm not in my office, so I don't have all my tools. So I'm going to set this as a presentation view, so this slideshow. And that's not going to work, so I won't be able to read it. So we're going to have to stop the slideshow and move this over. All right, so you're going to have to look at the everything in the sidebar, but that's going to be okay. You won't have the right view, but that's going to be okay. All right, so how technology is affecting the mental and physical health of our children, the problems and solutions. And so it's always really important to me to talk about solutions, but first we really need to understand what the problem is. And I think with Wi-Fi, I think there's a deeper problem than there really is. I mean, Wi-Fi is a physiological, has a physiological effect, but that's not really the root of how we're going to deal with it. We can get rid of these devices, but I think there's more to the solution than that. So I'm going to get into that right now. All right. So when I look at how the world has changed over the last 50 years, I'm astonished at the speed at which a few aspects of our human existence have become almost unrecognizable in such a short time. In some ways, we humans are quick to adapt due to our innovation and creativity, and we are continually inventing ways to make our lives easier and survival more imminent. One exceedingly profound way that we have done this is through our use of technology. So technology has dramatically changed the world in which we live and the way we relate to this world, as if we are playing lead roles in a science fiction writer's bizarre fantasy. Many of the ideas such writers hypothesized, although not exactly accurate in the details, were not so far off in the concepts. Without wanting to sound paranoid, Big Brother is watching, anonymity is replacing individuality, and there is a massive level of control media, advertising, and the pull of virtual reality is having over what we think and how. There are few rare corners of the world where Wi-Fi cannot reach. The noise, where there are no messages and downloads and location tracking. The noise this constant barrage of information is creating is changing our basic physiology, our social structures and relationships, the very energy on our planet. And are those changes good? And we all, I think, here can say probably not. Our lives have been digitalized. So our use of technologies has exploded in the last generation, and we are a far cry from Sunday evenings gathered around the TV watching the weekly innocent family television show. Now children and teens are exposed to a barrage of violent and sexual images daily. They text message and send emails to their friends in real time, and if their place of school or work or home does not have Wi-Fi, this is a massive inconvenience. It is as if technology has become a foundational component of survival and a fundamental human right. And this has become our new normal, just as it is just as is the bastardization of our current modern diet and the substandard state of our children's health. This may be normal, but is it healthy? We are seeing an explosion of chronic illness in our general population, and what is most concerning is that we are seeing the incidence of exploding among our children and teens. So conditions we rarely saw in children a mere generation or two ago, like literally, I can remember when I was a child, this not being the case, such as cancer, autoimmune conditions, and mental health challenges, such as depression and anxiety. Rare childhood conditions such as autism, ADHD, and asthma, they were rare at one point, or at least, one child in, a class or an entire school, and that's just not the case anymore. As well as new categories of diagnoses such as oppositional defiance disorder are currently commonplace amongst our children. So why? The finger of causality points to our stress-filled lives, poor diets, and mentally and our increasingly toxic world. Sorry, that was supposed to say mentally and physically toxic world. And one of the main culprits in this perfect storm is not how wired we have become, but how dependent we have become on technology. There is a triad of factors that make up this wired category. So that's technology, media, and Wi-Fi, or any physical EMF exposure, right? So Wi-Fi is one of those things. Parents and teachers are in a unique situation to see what is happening. We have grown up with technology, but technology was on the periphery of our lives. We remember a time when there was no internet. Email was just catching on when I started university, and we still used books for research. I buried myself in the musty stacks of the library, and I actually remember handwriting my first essays in university before I was gifted an old Commodore 64 computer. If anybody remembers those, then you're old. This was not so long ago, and in the 80s and early 90s, in fact. Now every household has the most up-to-date computer, often one in every bedroom or backpack. Every child has a personal device of some kind, and many of them have cell phones even as young as 8 years old. Children, that's actually even younger now. I know some kids who have them younger than that. Children born since the 90s will not know a world that existed before Netflix, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. In fact, that world would most likely look old and outdated to them, boring and uninteresting. I don't think many of us would dispute the fact that technology has made communications exponentially faster and our access to information almost without limits. I would not be able to be sharing these thoughts with you if it were not for the internet, of course. But has it made our existence worse or better? Has it made us smarter, more successful, happier, healthier? We must understand how pervasive technology has become in our modern society to understand how Wi-Fi and other dangerous technologies have become part of our very fabric of being, our very culture, and the reality of how challenging it will be to control or make safe. So because of this, the pervasiveness of technology in our environment, it's really difficult for us to actually get rid of it because it's part of our culture. So how do we do that? As many of my fellow speakers will be so expertly laying out for you tonight, electronic devices emit EMFs that are severely damaging human health. But in order to find the solutions to mitigating these effects, we need to look into why we use this technology in the first place, what we believe due to culture and media, the social habits we are forming, and the addictive nature and allure of technology. Next, what is electronic screen syndrome? Okay, so this is really important to flesh out because of the stress and the effects of stress on the human body. And not only do we have stress because of the physiological aspects of the, actually the EMF radiation, but also the effects of what people or the children are doing while they're using the Wi-Fi as well, and the devices that they're using. So the question raised is this use of technology damaging our children? Is it too much? So Dr. Victoria Dunkley, as a lot of us know and love, she writes extensively about electronic screen syndrome, and she says that ESS is essentially a disorder of dysregulation. Because it is so stimulating, interactive screen time shifts the nervous system into fight or flight mode, which leads to dysregulation and disorganization of various biological systems. Over time, repeated fight or flight and overstimulation of the nervous system from electronics will often eventually culminate in a dysregulated child. So let's have a closer look at what is happening and what the impact is of our current overuse of technology has. So yes, and I would say that most of us are overusing it. Actually, most of us are. Very few of us are not. And how it's affecting our children and the effects on their lives. So it's really important to recognize the stress response that happens. Stress is the subject from where everything that I will present from the rest of this article, there's a presentation will begin. So again, as Dr. Dunkley was explaining in her book, human beings do have stress, but we are not meant to have the chronic stress or the amount of level of stress that is created by our modern environment and lifestyle, or the stimulation caused by the use of screens and gadgets. So I'm just going to go through this just really quickly here, a quote from her book, because it really nicely talks about some of these effects that stress is having on our children's bodies. So one way to think about ESS, electronic screen or syndrome, is to view electronics as a stimulant, in essence, not unlike caffeine, amphetamines, or cocaine. Electronic screen devices use puts the body into a state of high arousal or hyperfocus, followed by a crash. This overstimulation of the nervous system is capable of causing a variety of chemical, hormonal, and sleep disturbances in the same way other stimulants can. In fact, abuse and addiction of stimulant drugs such as cocaine and methamphetamine have a very similar presentation to that of ESS, including mood swings, concentration problems, and restricted interests outside of the substance or activity of choice. Now, when we're talking about mental health, I think that is a very important point to make. This overstimulation causes chronic stress and often leads to the various health conditions that a stressed body can succumb to. All right, so a child's brain on technology, and one of our people that are here listening today talked about the effects on children's brains, and she's interested in finding out more about that. In addition to the effects, the EMFs that are physically emanating themselves, it is important to ask the question, what are our children doing while the Wi-Fi is on? What are they using this tool for, and what are the effects? So if we are to look into the brain engaged in screen time, so if we're looking at the brain while it's engaged, we'd see the brain getting too much activity in some areas, such as the reward pathways and the pathways sensitive to light, and not enough activity in other areas, such as regions associated with empathy, reading social cues, and delaying gratification. Over time, this leads to the brain to develop in a fragmented fashion, making it less flexible and less resilient. So again, that's from some of Dr. Victoria Dunkley's work. Excessive electronic usage not only causes overstimulation and stress that alter hormonal and chemical balance, but also alters the way in which a child and adolescent's brain develops. Due to the process of pruning, where the body prunes away areas not in use, excessive electronic usage influences the very development of our child or teen's brains. So this phenomenon is not only affecting young brains, but the brains of people of any age. Digital dementia is the new condition on the block, coined by Manfred Spitzer, to explain the cognitive decline experienced by people who overuse digital technology. Attention span is dwindling to less than that of a goldfish, and overstimulation is deteriorating our ability to sort, process, and think clearly. So another really important point, I think, to make is we have a culture of addiction. So this is what we are creating by this whole fight or flight stress, a quick fix mentality that we are cultivating within our children. And so the biochemical roller coaster ride of excessive screen time can create the perfect storm for addiction. Disrupted hormones, imbalanced neurotransmitters, emotional strain, lack of spirituality, and poor physical and mental health. Children and teens can easily become addicted to the chemical high they get from the pleasure centers of the brain when receiving a text or playing an action-packed video game. Our children just can't naturally get to the extreme dopamine high electronics can give us, thus leaving children anxious, deflated, and wanting the next fix. Just as sugar is an addiction most people don't recognize as life-altering or life-threatening, addiction to electronics is a very real, very damaging phenomenon sweeping our modern families, and due to the evidence I presented thus far, may be even more detrimental than other more visible addictions since it is covert, more insidious than alcohol, drugs, or a poor diet. Couple this with hours on a wireless headset, and you have the perfect storm for serious physical damage as well, including breaches of the blood-brain barrier, neurochemical disruption, inflammation, and even neural autoimmunity, which I've seen in many clients of mine, actually. So again, I just want to sort of go through a few of these real quickly. I'm not going to actually read the what I wanted to present about them, but PTSD is also an issue that we can see come up with kids who are excessively on electronics, and also not just because of the physical effects of the Wi-Fi radiation and the dirty electricity and such, but also because of the physiological effects of the blue lights and the stimulation that they get as well when they play, or when they're on it, when they're on their phones, getting texts and such. So PTSD, mental emotional effects. I want to go into this a little bit further. There is also a significant fallout in relation to our children's mental health that is caused in part by the physiological issues such as the stress response and overstimulation, as well as addictive behavior and the social problems and disrupted personal growth that we will get into in a moment. So in addition to the exponential rise in the incidence of depression and anxiety in our children and teens, in relation to our children's mental health, new syndromes and conditions are cropping up every day to explain many children's inability to cope with life and increasingly prevalent behavioral problems, some of which are, and you may have heard of these, so I just mentioned digital dementia, oppositional defiance disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, electronic screen syndrome, which is another one I'd already mentioned. So these are things that we didn't actually see. They're new entries into the textbooks of psychology. And why is that happening? And this is why I think that it is, because of this combination between overuse of screens and technology in general and the technology itself. So where are these behavioral problems coming from? Again, so are we just less skilled as parents than our own parents? I don't think so. Much of the cause can be tied to excessive screen time, overuse of technology, and EMF exposure. These mystery conditions don't appear to be different conditions, but varying manifestations of the same problem. And so we have a whole bunch of fallout. We have these symptoms that happen, and a wide array of seemingly behavioral issues that these children are affected by. And if we're talking about schools, we're not just talking about in the home, but if we're talking about in schools, it's really teachers are trying to handle all of these things and not even realizing that sort of the cause is really under their own roof. And so these things like meltdowns and tantrums, moodiness, withdrawal, ADHD, and autistic-like behaviors, demand for instant gratification, leading to lowered emotional IQ. And so we have anxiety, depression, anger and rage, lack of empathy, overwhelm, and even entitlement. So we have, again, lots of social problems, and we could probably list those off, like, focusing on the superficial, lack of correct connectedness with elders, lack of connectedness with themselves and their environment, less observant, apathetic, increased sense of anonymity. All of these things happen when there's this sort of an escape into the virtual world as well. There are also intellectual consequences, dumbing us down, not thinking for yourself, not looking for solutions, looking for quick fixes, right? The easy way, are sort of cultivated by our culture of addiction. So stunting personal growth. So now we need to recognize the problem. All right, so I'm going to scroll down here and just skip a bunch of this stuff. I just wanted to say, I want to back up just for a second. I want to say all of the physical problems exposure to EMFs have on our children's bodies, including inflammation, disruption of the sleep-wake cycle, breaches in the blood-brain barrier, the destruction of the microbiome, damage to the DNA, are all causal factors in the development of autoimmune conditions, cancers, and mental and mood disorders, from depression to anxiety to suicidal ideation. So these can get extremely serious. Okay, so I think always when I'm talking about the doom and gloom, I want to talk about we need to recognize the problem to find out what the solution is. And again, I think that the solutions are definitely all of the stuff that every other speaker is going to talk about way more expertly than I am, about, what can we do? How can we get out of our schools? What do we do with policy? What do we do with equipment? How do we, logistically do all these things? But my solutions that I want to share today are really about what I share with families. And then the family can take that into the schools, and we can turn it into the school setting as well to make that safety of our children a lot more wider than our own front doorstep, because our kids are going to leave our homes, and we're not going to be able to control any of that unless we make change in our schools and in our other public spaces. So here are our solutions, some solutions that I give to parents. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides, I think. Yeah, so we already know that they're inundated out in the world, and they can cause all kinds of health problems, EMFs, and also this overexposure to technology. And so here are some of the solutions that I give to parents when I talk to them and try to guide them through this minefield, is what I call it. So again, of course we're doing those things that we're, all like to limit our exposure to the Wi-Fi itself, to the technology itself. And so limiting usage, the duration, lessening proximity, protect body with nutrients, ground your equipment, ground yourself, find out where there's dirty electricity and exposure. Remember that cell phones are not toys, right? So, the duration and all that stuff. And I think that more people who are on this panel are actually going to go more for, elimination, actually, like getting rid of the source and not even having Wi-Fi in the schools whatsoever, which I'm all for. And I think there are lots of ways to do that. And I would like to, give the floor to everybody else to talk about that. But what I really want to stress here today is for parents to be aware of the power of technology and teach their children. So, and I tell them, teach your children. Use technology as a tool and to your advantage, and to teach your children how to do this as well, right? Set boundaries and limits around your and your children's usage. Go on a screen fast if warranted. I just tell parents, just pull the plug and just do something else. You don't need to be doing this, and especially since it's very damaging to health. And so do activities, like board games and walking and sports and hiking and swimming, potlucks, playing at parks, like et cetera, singing, playing instruments. Work toward real life connection. That's what I encourage. And the same thing in school setting. And that's not, it's not at all different, where in the school setting, they're doing things that are outside of that technology, right? So they're actually returning to the classroom as a community. Nurture spirit, creativity, space, self-reflection, mindfulness, and awareness. Foster gratitude and sense of self, responsibility, self-control, discipline, patience, love, and self-care. Returning really to the humanness of the human. Elicit the relaxation response. So when I talked about the stress response, where we have higher cortisol, we have, and stress is the mother of all illness, eliciting that response to be able to move back into relaxation, rest, digest, repair. That's very important. And returning to nature. Nature is meditative, makes you feel connected to self and to others and to the world around you. And returning to each other. So, I'm just going to skip here. All right, so my conclusion is that technology is a permanent part of our lives. It's here to stay. It is so pervasive in every aspect of our existence that we can boldly assert that it is here to stay. However, we need to decide if it will be a tool we use to advance the success of our children, or if it will contribute to their ill health and the unraveling of our families and communities. Technology is not evil, but it is also not benign in any way. What is certain is that overexposure to electronics and radiation, as well as overuse of screens and devices, is one class of root culprits that is severely damaging to our children's health. And through awareness and empowered action, we can protect our children and make their lives and ours much more harmonious, rich, and fulfilling as well. So that's the final thought I want to leave you with, and I hope I crammed that in, and I was finished in 15 minutes. I don't know if I was.
Thank you, Carla. You did great. I really, really appreciate that. So, wow, just a powerhouse of information. And thank you. I know you just skimmed. So, wow, just a powerhouse of information.